How to read a book. Is this material for you? Well, if you are a literate person, if you learned how to read when you are in elementary school, probably you already know how to read a book. But can you read well? Elementary literacy alone is not enough, because take a look at an illiterate person who is a functional illiterate. That's a person who can decipher letters and words, they can read sentences aloud. However, despite the fact that this functional illiterate can read, they cannot understand the information that has been read. So, congratulations to you for being here with us. You are interested in improving the way you read. Most people don't even question the quality of their reading. It is important that we improve our reading, our comprehension skills. The strategy that we use in reading will make all the difference in acquiring knowledge. Learning to read better is important because books are a valuable source of wisdom. They're given to us by the best thinkers, the best achievers in humanity. When two people are reading a book, they're apparently doing the same activity. However, depending on the strategy that they use, one of the people will have acquired great knowledge while the other won't have the same benefit. So what is the difference between them? One person is using active reading instead of passive reading. With active reading, we can enjoy the books as if they were teachers at our side. Books can teach us something even when the author may not be among us anymore. That is really great news, because this means we can have access to the greatest minds in the history of civilization. So, for those of you who want to read books quickly and efficiently, I'm very pleased to offer you this Arata Academy summary of Mortimer Adler's How to Read a Book. It is a classic, was written in 1940, it was revised in 1972 with Charles Van Doren. It provides us the guidelines for reading critically quality books. Very shortly I'll explain to you what a quality book is. And with this Arata Academy summary, our intention is to make the material even more current. Because now with the internet and social media and technology, there are even more recent techniques that you need to learn. You will learn how to spend less time on books that aren't that useful to you, and then you'll spend more time on quality books that will increase your knowledge. Now, maybe you're thinking, oh, I don't know, a book about how to read a book? That's kind of a nonsense. Am I going to need a book to read a book about how to read a book? The reason for this initial strangeness is that you might believe that you don't need to learn how to read a book. Maybe you are the type of person who reads a lot, but I can tell you, probably there are many points where you can improve. Unfortunately, just like many people think that they are better drivers than the average, like almost everybody thinks that they are above average, there is also a good chance that we don't know our own weaknesses when it comes to reading. And to improve reading, we need to avoid being passive readers, expecting all the relevant information just fall on our laps. You should investigate, and getting what you want from a book requires work. Reading is an active task, and it requires skill. Reading is an activity, therefore, reading should be active, not passive. Because it is an active task, it requires skill, and today you will learn how to develop this valuable skill. As a practical result of this Arata Academy summary, you will learn exactly what to do to develop your reading ability. So, let's start with some general tips, and then we move on to some specific and more advanced tips. General reading tips. To read well is to ask the right questions in the right order and seek answers. There are 4 main questions you need to ask in each book. What is this book about? What is being said in detail? And how? Is this book true in whole or in part? And so what? Always remember that your amount of time is limited. You should always try to save time by avoiding to read unnecessary material. This is what abstracts are for. It is to save you time. Obviously, a summary is not intended to replace the complete reading of a book. The role of a summary is to save you time, delivering the maximum amount of information in the shortest time possible. Keep in mind that each type of book contains different structures, different motivations, and with experience, you will be able to sort the books and make the appropriate adaptations in reading. In some cases, just reading the book won't be enough to understand the content. You will need to consult other books for support, for reference. And this is how you will acquire the necessary basis of preparation to be able to truly absorb the knowledge. In the case of reading books written by great authors, it can be interesting for you to look at the order, the sequential order in which the books were written originally. And the reason for this is that these people, these great authors, they can develop their ideas throughout different published works. Make notes. Remember that we said that active reading allows you to have a dialogue with the author. It is by making notes that you're going to have this type of interaction with the book. So don't be afraid to make notes on the page, obviously as long as the book is yours. Make notes, add references to the pages. In addition to making notes, use other ways as well to highlight useful information. You can be underlining things, circling, folding the pages, write on the margins, at the top and the bottom of the pages. Rewrite the key points of the book with your own words. This is the best exercise that you can do to prove that you actually understood the information. Make an effort to truly understand the content of the book. To raise our level of knowledge and gain benefits from reading, we must read quality books, books which are above our current capacity, our current level. We have to go to the next level. Quality books deserve our time, our attention. Quality books deserve to be read more than once. The more effort you put, the better. Actively reading quality books will involve effort because we're going to be asking questions and taking notes and making summaries and making our own criticism. The goal is to grow our level of knowledge to get near or maybe even higher than the level of the author. The key to absorbing and understanding texts is to apply the direct and simple techniques that involve active reading that you're going to be learning here. Instead of blindly accepting all the ideas that are proposed by the author, question these ideas. This is what makes an active reader. Active reading allows you to analyze and evaluate information in an intelligent way. On the other hand, passive reading only allows us to memorize without understanding. We don't just want to be vomiting facts without understanding these ideas. We want true knowledge. When there is no effort to read actively, it means that we're just taking a look at the information. This is how most people read, but most people don't know how to read well. They're not learning anything new. The 4 levels of reading. To read better, we need to master these 4 levels of reading. There's no way to advance and progress to a higher level without first mastering the most basic levels. The first level is elementary reading, which is just turning symbols into information. The second level is inspectional reading, in which we obtain the maximum information from a book in a short period of time. The third level is analytical reading. In it, we are going to be trying to understand the content, really understand it. And then the 4th level is syntopical reading, in which we're going to explore a subject through different types of sources, through a wide reading. Elementary reading. Elementary reading is the ability to turn symbols into information. It is this ability that differentiates people who are literate from those who are illiterate. However, just being literate doesn't mean much, because there are the people who are functionally illiterate. They are able to read words, but they don't really understand very well what they just read. To master the first level of elementary reading, you need to know how to understand how letters form syllables and how syllables form words. It doesn't really require a lot of intellectual capacity. The basis for elementary reading is usually acquired in our childhood, in the literacy process. Although this is a very basic stage, all of us have room to grow, to evolve. For example, we can increase our reading speed. We can improve our understanding, interpret the context differences. We can expand our vocabulary. We should always improve even on this first level, the elementary reading. Let's make a quick comment about speed reading. One important improvement that we can all make is to read at an appropriate speed. And most of the speed reading courses are going to be focusing on two tricks. They're going to be reducing fixations, which are the number of jumps that our eye makes, because we don't read continuously, moving our eyes throughout the lines of text. The eyes are going to fix our focus on a part of the line, as if we are taking a photograph, and this fixation takes about half a second, and then we jump to the next piece of text that we're going to be reading. We're going to be doing our next fixation. So to read faster, we want to reduce the number of fixations that we do. There's one here, another one here, and we're going to do them faster. The second thing we do is to reduce regressions. That's the time that we spend rereading stuff because we didn't really understand it in the first time that we read it. So the solution for these two things is just pass our fingers or pencil in the page. Very simple, as we are reading a little bit faster than we feel comfortable. And then with practice, this makes us reduce our bad reading habits. It increases our reading speed. And for a detailed lesson on multiplying your reading speed up to 4 times, you can go to our How to Learn Faster course. Just take a look at the link here. Inspectional reading. Remember that your amount of time is limited. Therefore, you should use inspectional reading to absorb the fundamentals of a book in a short space of time. We want to quickly understand what kind of book we have before us. We do inspectional reading to increase our productivity. The inspectional reading allows us to decide if this book that we have in front of us is worth our time. If in the inspectional reading it becomes very clear that it is not a quality book, or maybe it is a quality book but it's not a book that suits our current needs, just leave it aside. Let's look for other books. Don't waste time doing things that are just not worth it, reading books that are not worth your time right now. You may have heard criticisms about people saying, these days, people, they just go to the internet and they're like scanning, doing this vertical reading. They're not really reading, they're just, scrolling around just to take a basic idea of the text. This is not necessarily a bad habit, because when we skim a text, we're deciding whether it pays to read the entire material more closely. So just leave this prejudice aside and be thoughtful about what do you actually want to include in your reading list. If you're faced with a quality book, then you're going to do a second reading. This first inspectional reading allows you to have a vision of the whole, which will help you to understand the next, more in-depth readings. Inspectional reading can be done in 2 steps. We're going to do pre-reading and then we're going to do superficial reading. Pre-reading is a quick check of the book. We're going to take a look at the preface, study the index, the first pages. This should give you a general knowledge about the book, should let you understand the chapters of the book, what is crucial, important to understand the main argument of the author. You can use the following tips for the pre-reading. Read the title of the pages, the preface to understand what to expect from the reading. Study the table of contents and the summary for a general sense of the structure of the book. Search for the key passages of the book. Read the editor's notes to understand the context. Skip through the entire book, reading a few paragraphs and pages through the book with a special focus at the end of each chapter, searching for the main ideas, the main thesis, the main arguments. Ask organized questions about what you are reading. Read the last pages of each chapter, because few authors resist this urge, this temptation to be summarizing what they just said, what is important, what they consider to be new, relevant in their work when they do these final pages of each chapter. Pre-reading will also help you to have a very good view of the whole and also to put this book into a certain category. Read the index. It's gonna give you an idea of the structure of the book. Where's the book going? Understand the language of the book. What topics are covered? What other references are mentioned? What other authors are mentioned? What are the technical terms, the jargon that is being used? Do you understand all of that? Identify the main points. Which chapters present the main theory of the book? Jump straight to the end. Authors generally make this summary of their work in the last pages. Remember, you're not reading a fiction book. So you don't need to be surprised as the story unravels in front of your eyes. On the contrary, you want to know as quickly as possible what this book is about. What are the ideas of the book? How this book can help you to learn and understand something. Use the last chapters of the book, which is a summary of the main ideas where the authors conclude what they want to say. All these techniques are going to help you to decide whether this book really deserves your time and your attention. Superficial reading. If you liked what you saw during the pre-reading, now you can move on to carry out the second part of this inspectional reading, which is superficial reading. Superficial reading is used when you are reading a book that is above your level. It is a difficult book. And this initial difficulty of this book is a very good sign that the content of the book is at a higher level, and therefore you're going to learn something there. We want always to raise our knowledge with this type of book. As we are still performing inspectional reading, speed is still very important. We tend to be paralyzed when we are confused. Then we spend a lot of time trying to reflect on what is being said. Don't do this right now. During the superficial reading, speed is very important. We should read the book from beginning to end without stopping. So please don't take breaks reflecting on things that you don't understand. Don't open your browser to be researching on the internet for certain ideas that you don't understand. Don't look for the meaning of unfamiliar words in the dictionary. Don't write in the margins. All of this can end up distracting you from superficial reading. So you really want to be fast. Don't stop. Just keep going. If you don't understand something, just keep going. Move past it. If the book is of a high quality, later, you can reread it, and then you're going to answer the important questions that you have. Superficial reading will allow you to have a first contact with the totality of the book. Superficial reading is the first step towards analytical reading, which is understanding and then interpreting the contents of a book. Now let's talk about analytical reading. If you did the inspectional reading correctly, and you concluded that yes, you are facing a book that is really worth reading with more time and more attention, now it is time to do analytical reading. Analytical reading is a complete read. When it comes to good books, we want to spend more time reading them, learning from them, making the most of them. We learned here that when we are reading something that we don't completely understand, it is a good sign we are facing knowledge which is on a higher level. We also learned that knowledge is gained through effort that we put in active reading. So, after we make sure that we have a quality book using these techniques that we just used, then we can devote more time, more effort to be understanding it, doing this analytical reading. Now we are faced with a valuable message that the writer is communicating. Analytical reading will help us to increase our understanding. This is how we learn from each other. And our goal is to overcome the initial inequality of knowledge that we have between our current level and the level of the book. We want to get closer to the writer. We want to know what the author is saying. What do they mean? Why they say what they say? So, to perform the analytical reading, classify the book according to the type of book and subject. Write in your own words, in one paragraph, what this entire book is about. What are the main ideas? And then list the main parts of the book in their order, in their relationships, the different ideas, how these ideas are connected and related. You want to understand the meaning of the main technical words that are used in this book. You want to define the problem or the problems that the author is trying to solve and the other problems that were not adequately addressed by this author. You'll probably notice that although all of this sounds easy, it's going to be a lot of work. And that is why we did the inspectional reading, to be prepared to do analytical reading. So then you do your critical reading. Just please don't disagree with everything, because there is a real difference between true knowledge and just a personal opinion. To disagree, you have to present good reasons for your critical judgment. So if you have some criticism, be specific about where the author can be uninformed, illogical, or impartial. Analytical reading is so important that it deserves to be detailed in 3 parts. Number 1, what is the book about? First, we're gonna read the entire book, doing this superficial reading. And if the book is good, then we go ahead and do the analytical reading. Remember that we left the research and the reflection for the future? Now, that's the moment. When we did the superficial reading, speed was the main factor. We were not stopping to be reflecting, researching. Now, during the analytical reading, this is the moment that we're going to be making notes to identify what are the points, the parts that need further study. And then we review the entire book, the structure of the book, identifying the main parts of this skeleton. Finally, we're going to make a list of the questions that we think that the author is trying to answer. What is being said in the book? Identify all keywords and understand what the author means by them. Use the title, the headings, figures and glossary and formatting to understand the message of the book. Understanding definitions is essential. The author probably made definitions about the main concepts at the beginning of the text. Read this. Without understanding the main terms, the main concepts of the book, well, it's going to be a little bit difficult to understand completely what the book is really trying to say. So, take time to decipher the message. Do additional research on the internet. Use encyclopedias, technical dictionaries. So then you really understand what the key words mean. Find out what the author's main arguments are. Which phrases is he repeating, highlighting? What phrases do you find difficult to understand? To make sure that you understand what the author is trying to say, you should reformulate these key phrases into your own words. What problems is the author trying to solve? What are the main proposals, the main ideas, the main theories of the author? Is the book true, in whole, or in part? When you're analyzing a book, you must evaluate the importance and the logic of the book. However, you must completely understand the material before you agree, you disagree, or just remain neutral. Be open-minded, be collaborative, even in the moments when you disagree. Remember that both you and the author are, I guess, curious people trying to find truth. So be specific in any criticism that you make. When you find ideas that you disagree with, you have to check your emotions. Remember, just because you don't like the argument of the author, it does not necessarily mean that the arguments are wrong. Be humble. Remember, there is a chance that you have not understood completely the main ideas of the author or other important supporting points, and arrogance can really close doors to knowledge. The author, on the other hand, is a human, right? So he or she can be uninformed, outdated, illogical, or present incomplete arguments. That's why critical reading is so important. Now, let's talk about syntopical reading. Syntopical reading is also known as comparative reading, and it represents the most demanding and difficult type of reading of all. Only go with syntopical reading after you master the previous levels of reading, specifically the good analytical reading. Syntopical reading involves reading many books on the same subject and comparing and contrasting the different ideas and vocabulary and arguments. Our goal is not to be reading one specific book. Our goal is greater than that. We want to understand the subject. We want to develop deep fluency in that subject. So the book in your hands is just one of several sources of knowledge to help you with this mission. So here are some techniques for you to do your syntopical reading. Establish common terminologies between different books. Clarify issues and problems through content on the same subject. Compare different points of view, actively seeking opinions to be evaluating the quality of each source's argument. Analyze the discussion and point of view of each author to search for the truth. By reaching this point, you should have a very good idea, a solid idea of the subject that you're addressing and the sources that have something important to say about it. Syntopical reading is the fourth reading level because it involves a combination of elemental reading, inspectional reading, and analysis. Like any good project, the syntopical reading phase starts with good planning. So follow this 6-step process to help you to prepare. Identify the specific subject that you want to address. Realize that it takes more than one book to achieve true knowledge in this area. Make a good bibliography. Systematically analyze all the books in your list. Solidify the subject that you're addressing. List the questions that you want to research in more detail. Shorten your bibliography. You keep only the books that have something important to say about the questions that you asked. Remember, don't waste your time reading books that are not going to help you. Always use inspectional reading to save you time. Syntopical reading consists of constructing an analysis of the subject. When you read syntopically, you delve deeper than any of the books individually. We want to achieve a level of knowledge that can only be achieved by consulting different works. So, how can we learn faster using syntopical reading? We'll have to save time through the use of inspectional reading. We're going to be carefully selecting the works that really deserve an analytical reading. What is the main difference between syntopical reading and the individual use of analytical reading and inspectional techniques? It is that when we are reading syntopically, we have one specific question. We want to find the answer to that question, and we're going to use the different sources to find truth. Our goal is not to understand one specific book. Our goal is broader. We want to go further and find the answer to our question. We want to find several different perspectives to form an opinion. Therefore, forming a complete picture of the entire book is not necessary here. That is why this is not analytical reading. We can get right to the point. Just read the excerpts from this book that are relevant to solving your question. Find the most important parts. You need to find the right books and then the passages that are most relevant to fill your needs. So the first step is an inspectional reading of all the books that you have identified being relevant. Make a note of the important excerpts. Understand your doubts and goals. Instead of focusing on the author, the focus has to be on you. This means, instead of you focusing to understand what the author is trying to do in that book, you need to focus on the questions that you have and the moments in which that book is telling you something useful. We have to create our own propositions. We have to clarify our problems. With these problems in mind, then we can start to look for the answer in the materials that we found in our bibliography. Compare different arguments. If you asked a clear question for which there are multiple answers, now the problem has been defined. Well done. Now you have to understand different points of view. Understand various perspectives within that problem. Only after knowing different opinions, then you can create your own intelligent opinion. So, as a conclusion and next steps, now you see there are different levels of reading. These levels have to be trained sequentially. We can only carry out a good syntopical reading after we master good analytical reading. We can only do analytical reading after we do a good inspectional reading, that we filter the books that really deserve the analytical reading. And this is only possible, of course, if we do a good essential reading. All of this is done to save time. So then you can dedicate time, this very special and precious resource, to the materials that really help you to improve your knowledge. For full access to our How to Read Better material, you can visit arata.se/how to read better.